How's it going, everybody? And welcome to another episode of The Operating Room. I'm your host, Mahserejian, aka at RotoSurgeon from Twitter. And today's topic is going to be all about buy, sell, hold for fantasy basketball. Now we're at the midway point in the season with the All-Star break coming up next week. And a lot of teams, specifically those at the bottom of the playoff totem pole, are looking to either buy, sell, hold their players because they need to compete with the top teams. Top teams really don't have to worry. They're probably just holding a bunch of their guys unless they feel like they're kind of fringe dudes who could lose their jobs or really go out at the end of the year and be held out or something. But that's typically not a worry when you're already in first or second place, especially if you're there by a wide margin. But teams kind of in the fringe trying to get into the playoffs as well, they need to know what to do, and I'm here to help. So my first player that I'm looking to buy, Montrez Harrell. Now, since Anthony Davis' injury, Harrell has been scoring a tick up. His rebounding is similar, stocks are normal, assists roughly the same. Field goal percentage is still good. Free throw at about 75%, which is pretty solid for him. But for the most part, now with Marc Gasol also injured, Montrez Harrell is going to see another uptick now that he is starting as well. So Montrez Harrell definitely someone I'm looking to buy. I don't expect more than like 19, 20 points, but you can see that uptick, especially if LeBron James were to miss time in the next month or so. LeBron James, as we know, has seen massive usage jump with Anthony Davis out. And given that Kyle Kuzma has been disappointing a little bit, and the Lakers really don't have too many assets to buy with, they're going to rely on the guys in-house like Montrez that they did pay for in the offseason. So I'd look to buy Montrez right now if you can. Now to sell, Paul George, not that he hasn't been good since returning from his injury, but the injury in general worries me a ton. He is averaging 48% from the field with 20 points per game since returning, but he has had a couple scoring games in the teens. He isn't looking exactly stellar in the stock department. He's only at about 0.8 steals and 0.8 blocks per game in this stretch. But I just still worry about this weird injury. He had a numbness in his foot. I believe it was a bone edema issue. And I'm not a doctor, even though I may be the RotoSurgeon on Twitter. But any sort of numbness like this does worry me long term, because if it were to pop up again, they will hold him out for as long as possible. Even Tyronn Lue came out and said he is worried about the injury because he didn't really know what it was. But Paul George has been cleared to play. I just worry about if this were to pop up again. If it pops up during the fantasy playoffs, you're basically shit out of luck on someone like Paul George. That absolutely blows, and you don't want to be in that position. I'd rather sell while he still has some modicum of value. So yeah, Paul George is someone I'm not really interested in, even though he can help your team right now, and there's no real reason, statistically at least, to sell him. It's more so just being cautious with injury. And then the player I'm looking to hold, Wendell Carter Jr., center for the Chicago Bulls. Now, Carter Jr., he's rostered in about 80% of Yahoo leagues, and there isn't a lot of worry in terms of playtime, but it's really performance, especially with Lauri Markkanen looking to return. Maybe he takes some usage away from Wendell Carter Jr. There have been some games recently against DeAndre Ayton and the Phoenix Suns, and then Nikola Jokic recently where Wendell Carter Jr. fouled out. So it's been kind of tumultuous for Carter Jr., and his fantasy performance for the most part has been pretty fringe. He's been a top 120 player. Over the past month, he's been a lot better. He's been providing some threes, blocks, and steals, at least more so than last year, but his scoring and rebounding is fairly similar. However, if you can get him, if you already have him, you might as well hold him, because why would you drop him through this rough stretch when he has provided top 100 value at times? He's not someone you want to drop right now, just because he still does have some potential. Maybe they do make a trade at the deadline. They sell Thad Young. That can open up more usage in the front court. Maybe Wendell Carter Jr. takes a step after the All-Star break. That's not the craziest thing for young guys. In the past, we have seen outbursts in the second half, so maybe Wendell Carter Jr. does take that step. And even if he doesn't, he's been fine, honestly. Like 13 points, 8 rebounds, a block, a steal, and an occasional 3. You don't hate that, considering that's coming with a near 60% field goal percentage, 75% free throw percentage. It's fine. You don't hate it. You don't need to drop him. I wouldn't worry after the past 2 games. I'm sure he can return more valuable in the near future. Wendell Carter Jr. definitely someone I'm looking to hold. And thank you to everybody for tuning in, and talk to you guys next time.